Well, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining our session here. I'll give it a couple more seconds before we get started. I see some more people are joining. All right, let me get started. Well, today's session is about the best practices in field market planning. I have Elizabeth Kershaw joining us in this session today. Both Elizabeth and I have many years here at Kalibrate and also an extensive experience working with our clients in the market planning realm in different countries, different regions, helping them from very simple market plans to very complex market plans that cover either urban markets all the way through entire countries. What we plan to cover today in today's session is, what is a market plan for those who aren't familiar with the term? They might be just doing individual new builds and closures and rebrands. Why should we consider doing a market plan? Some of the best practices that we've learned over the years working with our clients. I mean, Kalibrate has been doing this for multiple decades. And how can Kalibrate help clients today that are interested in market planning? As in with all the other sessions we have in this VUC, if you have any questions, please use the questions tab on the right-hand side of your screen. If you put anything in chat, it's visible to everybody. If you put it into questions, it's visible only to the moderators. We'll answer them towards the end of the session. So let me get started here on what is a market plan, right? The market plan provides a structured framework for a company that wants to align what their goals are for that market, for that region, or for their country, with their goals to also to optimize their network of outlets. It combines different teams within the organization, so it could be the real estate team, the network planning team, some of the more senior management teams, engineering teams. It helps them get better organized in the implementation. Plans can be created for single year or multiple years, can be created also for small territories or for even all the way through full countries. It shows what the outcome of this market plan would be if carried out over multiple years. So even before starting spending a dollar in building outlets, buying outlets, or refurbishing them, you can see what your market share and your market effectiveness would be at the end of this market plan period. And it allows clients to support the request for expenditure. So if you're planning on buying X number of outlets or improving them, you can see what's the impact that's going to be on your finances and support that through the approval process. Some of the typical things that a market plan includes for a client are new builds, site optimizations, which could include minor upgrades, facelift, closures are one of them, addition of services like convenience stores and fast foods, car wash, and other activities that are offered at outlets. And then what can they also include is the ability to add demand. You can add demand to the market, and if you are aware of any competitor activity, you can add that as granular as you wish, also at a very high level, thinking that my competitor might build 5-10 outlets and see how that impacts your plan as well. And this allows you to prioritize the spend in that market, because during the market plan, you'll see the level of volume that is captured on each one of your projects and helps you decide which one will add more value to the network at that point. So why should I consider doing a market plan? Well, one, repeating from the beginning, it helps you align your goals with the strategies or the tactics that you decide to do in the markets. It takes you the ability to do a step back from your day-to-day operations and look at a more holistic view of everything that you're doing in the market from a strategic standpoint. It helps you justify capital budget requests, because now you're able to look at how much volume I'm able to capture with each one of my projects, and you're not just guessing or estimating how much they'll bring in. It gives you a roadmap for the future during those years the market plan is designed to cover. So you know that from a high level, even for a more detailed level, how much volume is going to be coming in throughout those years. And that's very helpful for head office folks, also for the field staff that's going to be managing and monitoring this market plan. It allows clients to be proactive, right? What does that mean? So we are planning ahead our strategy for the next 1, 2, 3, 5 years, instead of waiting until the competition does something and then start building our outlets or trying to react through price changes or doing discounts or marketing initiatives. So being more proactive instead of reacting to competitor actions. And it also helps us have this common goal in the organization, that they all understand that for us to achieve a certain market share or market effectiveness, this is what's going to take. We need to build so many outlets. We need to buy so many outlets. We need to improve our outlets if we cannot build any. These are the type of competitor actions or reactions that we expect in that market. So we're all together understanding what are the things that could happen in the markets. It aligns the expectations of everyone in the organization on what they need to do. So from this point on, I'm going to hand this over to Elizabeth, who's going to speak of the best practices that we have put together, or we have documented over many decades with our clients.
Thank you, Carlos. So, so when we talk about market planning, so the first thing is, I'm going to talk about is, what should you be considering? What should you be including when you're starting to look at doing a market plan? So the first step when you're doing a market plan, and this is talking to what Carlos said about this kind of ability to step back from your day-to-day activities and take a more strategic view of the market, is you always do an analysis of your existing position, because in order to plan where you want to go, you need to have a really good understanding of where you are today. So this is where you analyze your position. You try to estimate, or if you've got the data, look at your network share, your market share, what your market efficiency is, so how well your sites are performing, what your average throughputs are. Benchmark your sites versus your competition. Look at what your competitors are doing. So who's particularly active in the market? What is their strategy? Are they building? Are they closing? Are they rationalizing? Are there opportunities for consolidation in the market? So are there players who look to be open for acquisition? If you don't acquire them, will somebody else? Those are all things that you should be starting to look at and think about, because those are going to be very important to feed into your market plan. You want to have a look at things like supply constraints. So one of the things that you want to do as part of your network plan is identify, the strategic regions where you want to develop. Obviously, what you want to do is make sure that you have the correct supply to be able to support that growth. And then you're also going to be looking at, the economic growth within the country. So again, country, region, area, town, wherever, you want to look at, where are the new housing being built? Where are the new offices being built? Where is the future traffic going to come from? So you really want to try and get a good understanding of, what the dynamics of the market are from an economic perspective, because again, those are all going to help feed into to having a strong, robust market plan. So this is always the first step. The first step is really understanding the market, understanding your position within it, understanding your competition, and understanding the dynamics of that market. So the next step is to understand, now we know where we are, is to really articulate very clearly where we want to go. And this is where, you take the opportunity to understand what your company-wide strategic objectives are, and to make sure that whatever you articulate as your outcome for the market plan is in line with those strategic objectives. And again, that's going to make it much easier when you put your plan together, and especially when you're going to go and get investment. You can show that there is a consistency and a coherence with your plan with regards to what the organization is trying to achieve on a global level. So things you might want to look at are things like your network share, your market effectiveness, EBITDA, if that's a particular requirement, which it is in many organizations. Average throughput, again, that's sometimes a key metric for some organizations. And also looking at other offerings. So, for example, you may have specific targets around non-fuel. For example, putting, increasing your share of convenience stores on your network, for example, or putting a premium offering on some stores. Introducing the use of loyalty cards, so that you may have some additional strategic objectives that you want to take into consideration when you're putting your market plan into place. So now we realize where we are, realize where we want to go. Obviously, the next step is how are we going to get there? So how are we going to get from where we are to where we want to be? So the first step is to look at what you already have. It's great to build, it's great to buy, but it's actually even better to make sure that what you have is performing to its very best level. So what you want to do is, the first step is identify any potential health and safety risks, because obviously they are going to be kind of a priority from an investment perspective. Then you'll want to identify sites with opportunity. So which sites currently are underperforming their potential? So which sites should be doing better than they are, but are being held back by certain characteristics? So, for example, do they just not have the right facilities? Do they not have the right offerings at the site? Has the site just not been invested in for a while and it's starting to look tired? These are the things that we're going to start looking at and saying, okay, which sites really present opportunity because they should be doing much better and currently they're not, and what factors are holding them back. If you've got multiple brands, again, you could start thinking about, okay, which brands should I put on which sites? Do I have the right store? Do I have should I be putting car wash? Should I be looking to make this into a truck stop? Really looking at who's using the sites, who are my potential customers, what's the demographics around the site, who are my customers, and making sure that I have the appropriate offerings on site. And the final step is, for those of you with dealer networks, is identify the dealers with expiring contracts. Because what you want to do as part of the network plan, especially if you're doing a network plan over 2, 3, 5 years, is identify the sites that are at risk. So the sites that with expiring contracts that you absolutely want to keep, because obviously you're going to have to start thinking about what you could do to make sure you retain those, and also consider those that, well, maybe it's not so serious if they leave your network. And again, it's all about having an appropriate level of spend and activity, and focus. So again, focus your energies on the sites you absolutely want to retain, and don't focus your energies and time and attention on those sites that actually don't add anything to your network. So the next step is new builds, right? So we've optimized what we already have. And now we're going to look at new site opportunities. So, like I said, hopefully as part of the first and second step, we've identified, okay, the strategic areas we want to grow. So we know where we want to, where maybe we're slightly underrepresented, or we know where future growth is coming. So this is where we want to invest. We also might start looking at white spots, high potential areas where we're not currently present. Then we're going to want to start doing feasibility studies. So once we've identified both kind of at a macro level, the high potential areas and where we want to grow, and also within those areas, which are the specific hotspots where we want to focus our attentions in terms of acquiring land, or where we've already got land banks, we want to start doing feasibility studies, because we want to try and start confirming or infirming any locations that we have in mind, so that we can make sure that we're only taking forward the best locations as part of our plan, because we want to prioritize our capex investment in the areas that are going to give us the highest return. So I mentioned land banks earlier. So one of the key things with regards to your network plan is having a really healthy pipeline. If you're going to say, because a network plan needs to be realistic, and it needs to be actionable. So if you're saying, we're going to build 50 new builds over the next 5 years, but you don't have a single pipeline, you don't have a single site in your pipeline, you don't have a single site in a land bank, that you're going to have to be very, very aggressive with regards to prospecting real estate. So again, that's something to think about, is it's not just necessarily the plan in terms of, oh, this is what we're going to do in terms of new builds and so on. It's also the resourcing behind it. So if you're going to have to very aggressively go and find that real estate to do those new builds, you're going to need to consider that your real estate team is resourced to do so. And again, that will be part of the plan discussions. So this is something that you can take, for example, in terms of resourcing requirements, and say, right, this is the plan. We need this to meet our strategic objectives. In order to achieve this plan, this is what we need to put into place. Then the next thing we can consider is new to brand opportunities. So new builds are great. They can be quite difficult to obtain. Sometimes getting things like permits and permissions can take a really long time. Sometimes land is very hard to come by. So if you're looking to grow in certain areas, sometimes the quickest and easiest way to do so is through acquisitions or dealer targets. So one of the things that you're going to want to do is to say, okay, bearing in mind what my growth targets are, should I be considering acquiring potential sites? So again, those can be individual sites, so picking off individual sites, for example, single sites, operators who might be open to selling up, or even brands who may be willing to let go of certain sites in areas where maybe they're not strategically present, or full M&A opportunities. So again, as part of the initial scope, you'd have looked at who your competitors are, which networks might be open to selling. So again, it's identifying, okay, these networks might be open to acquisition. How do they fit? How do they fit with my network? Because obviously what you want to do especially when you acquire, is to make sure that you don't overlap too much. There's no point in acquiring sites that are next door to sites you already have. One, because it could cause you issues from a competition perspective. So if you have to justify your acquisitions in front of a competition authority, but also from a new customer perspective, it's obviously you're going to be competing for the same customer, and in fact over time, what you'll probably end up doing is closing one of them. So yes, so be strategic about the M&A acquisition targets. And again, we spoke a little bit about dealers. Which dealers are you going to be targeting? Are there any dealers from your competition in areas that are good for you that you should be potentially aggressively going after? And again, that gives you an idea of what targets do I need to give the retail dealer team in terms of getting new sites in certain areas. And so the last one, site rationalization. Right, so market plans aren't necessarily completely just about growth. It's about having a strong, robust network. So what you want to do as part of your activities is also look at your existing network and say, are there any sites that really aren't adding too much to my brand? Are they small? Do they not really have much scope for growth? If I'm looking to grow, for example, from a convenience perspective, is there just no room on the store on the forecourt to put in a good shop? Are there going to be very onerous investments required in the next couple of years from a health and safety perspective? Do I need to start investing massively in things like new tanks, for example, for a small site that's never really going to give me a good payback? So those are all things we need to consider. Or is this area not strategically important to me? In which case, if it's expensive to service, it's not strategically important, again, maybe I could consider closing some sites to focus on those geographies that are, cheap to service from a supply perspective, and makes sense for me from my geographic strategy. So there's lots of reasons why you may consider closing. It's important to always consider. No one likes closing sites, but it is important to consider. Are all the sites in my network contributing as they should? And if they are not, should I be keeping them within my network? And then Carlos mentioned this, one of the things you can also do, so this is kind of like the next level, is to kind of anticipate the future. So what's going on in terms of demand growth? which areas are growing, which areas are shrinking. Where should I be investing more? Where should I be looking to invest less? And again, within those specific areas that I've identified, where are the best places to grow? So what is the best intersection? Which are the best roads for me to be targeting in terms of building new sites or acquiring sites? And then the final step is anticipating competitor activities. Market plans should not be operating in a vacuum. And this is where we talk about market plans rather than network plans. A network plan is very much just focusing more on your activities. A market plan takes into consideration the whole of the market. So this is why we're saying, it's taking into consideration, changes in demand, changes in growth, but also what your competition are doing. So again, you should be looking to either incorporate into your plan or anticipate specific competitor actions. So you're looking to be reactive. You're looking to be on the front foot, not wait for things to happen to you. So you need to be considering what's likely to be happening down the road, because there's no point building a lovely plan and then having to throw it all in the bin 6 months later because something significant's happened in the market that's completely changed the way your market works. There's been an acquisition, which means that you've got a much more important competitor than you had previously, which you hadn't considered. You've realised that actually there's a premium shop concept that's taking off in your competition, and actually you haven't got anything to compete with it. So you really need to be thinking about what is my competition doing. You can incorporate if there's known competitor actions. So again, if you know that your competitors are opening sites in specific locations, you can consider that as part of your plan. So saying, these are the sites that are threatened because I know this competitor is opening nearby. So this is what do I need to do to this site to protect it. But also from a more strategic perspective, like I say, what are competitors doing in terms of offerings? Is your offering appropriate compared to what your competition are doing? Are you likely to have to roll out sort of, other concepts to keep up? So those are all things you need to be considering. Like I said, mergers and acquisitions, if you know that the consolidation is either likely or even possible, you may want to start considering what that might look like from a planning perspective, especially if you're building multi-year plans. So now we've said what we should be doing as part of the network plan. Who should we be involving in the network plan? In the market plan. So the first and the most obvious team is the network planning team, but not just them. Really, for a very effective market plan, you want to try and reach out as widely as possible to basically get as much feedback and input as possible to make sure that you have a robust market plan that has been bought in and contributed to by teams across the business. So the first step, like I said, network planning team. You may have a data analysis team who can certainly bring you insights, maybe from a macro level. So they may be keeping on top of trends in terms of monitoring what's going on in your market. They may also be able to help if they have specific tools around segmentation of customers, growth in the market, and so on. Your real estate team, if that's a separate team from your network planning team, certainly need to be working with them to understand, because they'll know what's going out in the field, where the specific potential locations they're starting to look at. Your engineering team, very important, especially when you're looking at your existing site optimization, to really understand, what's possible at certain sites. Because some sites, you may want to completely redevelop it, but actually, if there's not the space, that might be challenging. And they also might be able to give you insights into small tweaks you could do, for example, to make the flow around the site easier, for example. So definitely worth getting your engineering team involved. Territory managers, again, a really great resource. They're in the field, they're speaking to dealers, they're speaking to their site managers, they see what's going on, They have an idea of what's going on in terms of competition. So they're really plugged into what's happening in that market. So they're a really valuable resource, particularly if you're looking to get intel around, why sites are performing, why sites aren't performing, and what's going on in your market in terms of competition. Your non-fuel retail team, again, important to get them involved. Like I said, to make sure that you can talk about what's going on in the market, the concepts, who's going to have which shop concepts where. I think other non-fuel activities like car wash, if you have auto repair, lube bays, tires, all of these things that are you could be offering on your forecourt. You should be talking to your non-fuel retail team to understand, where you should be putting what offerings. If you have a retail strategy team or a company strategy team, again, you want to make sure that your goals and what you're looking to achieve with your network plan is consistent with the wider company plan. So again, it's worth checking in with them at the beginning, particularly when we're starting to look at the analysis of the existing and also the desired, to make sure that we're all in line and consistent, putting in the right direction. And if you've got a loyalty team, a marketing team, again, it's worth getting their feedback to understand, what are the plans from a marketing perspective? What is the strategy from a marketing perspective? Again, to make sure that your market plan is supporting that. So really, it's about making sure that we're putting all these teams together, and we're making sure that all our objectives and all our strategies are aligned, so that for the duration of the market plan, everyone is pulling in the right direction, in the same direction, and that is going to make your market plan robust and successful. So, how often should the exercise be run? So that will actually depend slightly on the dynamics of your market. So we generally say once a year to review the market plan, but we're saying to review the market plan, not to build a market plan. So we would say, some customers will build, if they're a very dynamic market, lots of things going on, lots of new sites being built. You may want to redo the whole market plan exercise once a year. If your market's not so dynamic, you might want to build your market plan, every 3, 4, 5 years. But you should still review the market plan yearly. Make sure that nothing's happened in the market that's fundamentally changed the assumptions that you used when you made the market plan, and also to tweak the market plan as needed as things change. Things change either on your side, or in terms of what you're seeing in terms of competition, or even around certain assumptions you made around economic growth and so on. So it's just worth checking in every so often. It can be, or should be, depending on your organisation, run in conjunction with the budget process. So having a robust, well put together, data-driven market plan will give you a very strong basis for capital budget allocation. So if you're looking to request a significant capital budget, having a strong, robust market plan that tells you, okay, if you give me this much, this is what I'm going to deliver, is going to be so much easier from a senior management perspective. If you can justify, not only what you're going to deliver, but how you're going to deliver it, and you've got a plan. So that certainly we recommend that you use your market plan to support your budget process. And you should also review your phase. So I said, you should definitely check into your market plan, but also as part of the market plan review, you should identify the challenges. So is there anything in your organization, anything that prevented you from executing your market plan as you had expected? So, is the resourcing right? Are there silos that mean that you're not communicating as well as you should? Are people not bought into the plan? So again, you've built the plan on your side, but actually there's some senior stakeholders who maybe haven't bought into the plan quite as much as they should have done. So you want to make sure that regularly, you just check in saying, this is the plan, this is what we should be doing. Are we achieving it? If we're not achieving it, what is it within is it just, there's some imponderables that we hadn't considered? Or are there things within my organization, are there things that I haven't considered that I need to address in order to make sure that I can execute my market plan? Because a market plan's great, but if you don't execute it, it's just a bit of a waste of time. So, this is a chart that we share with a lot of our clients when we're going through the market planning process. It really shows that this market planning process is never really over. So you start with your market analysis, you identify your objective, you develop your strategies, you combine all those strategies together, you produce your finalized market plan, you implement the market plan, you monitor the market plan, and then you start again. You conduct the market analysis, identify the market objectives. So how often you go through this cycle, again, does depend on how dynamic your market is. But it's not, a market plan is never a one and done. It's always continually evolving, continually changing document. So you really should not be, we always say it's living and breathing a market plan. Because your market will evolve, your market will change, and if your market plan doesn't change with it, then again, it's been a lot of effort, but it won't necessarily deliver the results that you thought it would. So I've talked a lot about how a market plan should be done, what a market plan should include. So as Carla said, we've been building market plans with our clients for decades. So how do we help our clients with market plans? So with our network planning solution, we have market data. So we have market data on both your network and your competitors to help you establish your current positioning, benchmark your offer, calculate key metrics. So really, all of that analysis perspective makes it so much easier if you've got the data. So, when we do a market study, we will literally collect all the data on traffic, demographics, your sites, your competitor sites, everything that you might need to really understand where you are compared to your competition, and how your sites are performing. That's all data that we collect. You can identify, in terms of the site optimization, you can identify the untapped potential in a network. So we have our performance potential quadrants, which allow us to segment your network to identify those sites that have high potential but aren't achieving that potential. And then you can actually use our 7 elements framework to then identify which particular elements of that site are holding it back. So not only which sites are underperforming but should be doing better, but also why they aren't doing better and what you can do to then address that. You can then also use Kalibrate planning analytical tools and our map-based insights to identify those high potential areas. So we talked about either high potential from a geographic perspective, so using things like demographics and so on, but also the very granular individual hotspots. So again, you can use use the traffic data, use demographic data, density of competition. You can use point of interest data to really hone in on those areas where you might want to invest or might want to build new stations. Obviously, everything that you plan to do or everything that you're considering doing, you can simulate within our tool and receive accurate projections. So again, that's going to help you to simulate potentially multiple options. So say, these are the whole panel of options that we could do. You can simulate each one and identify the ones that are really going to add value, and those that are would actually cost quite a lot of money, but will necessarily contribute significantly to the performance of your network. So again, from a capital allocation perspective, you can make sure that you're really allocating your capital to the very best projects. We also have the ability to simulate adding or removing demand from defined areas. So again, as part of the plan, you can actually add the demand, take the demand away, and then run your simulations, taking into consideration that evolution and demand. So you can actually build your future state, if you like, from a demand perspective, and then run all your simulations within that future state. So that's particularly valuable if you're building a network plan over a number of years. Also, if you're looking to build a significant number of new builds, because when you're building a new site, you're not building for next year or the year after, you're building for 5-10 years from now. And like I said, you can select any combination of simulations and calculate the combined outcome. So you can run multiple scenarios even. So you could decide that, even from for example, from a management perspective, they might say, okay, assume you have this much budget. How would you expand that? How would you expend that budget? And you can then say, okay, well, if I was to do this, and this, I could deliver this with a relatively high capital budget. And so, okay, well, assume that your capital budget's been slashed in half. What can you do then? And again, you can then select the right project and say, okay, if I only had half this capital budget, I could do this and this and this, and this is the outcomes it would deliver. So Kalibrate planning really helps you with every single step of that market planning process to really have a very data-driven, robust approach that is going to give you some predictive outcomes and basically allow you to say with confidence, if I was to deliver all of these actions on my network plan, this is the outcome that I will get. So without Kalibrate planning, with manual process, and some people do market plans with the manual process, using Excel spreadsheets, using ad hoc surveys, using their user community experience to estimate volume impact. But it is a time-consuming, laborious process. So it is going to take a long time to go around the field, do these ad hoc surveys, trying to understand what's going on in your market with maybe limited data sets, and then having to rely on experience. So sometimes that's great because you have really experienced people who've been doing this for a very long time and can have a fairly good idea. But actually, you're relying on that experience being uniform across your entire geography. So you may have some super experienced people who are actually really good at saying, okay, if we were to do this, this is what would happen. But maybe someone's only been in their job a couple of years, maybe their experience isn't quite so high. And if you're asking them to make those estimations, they may not have the tools and the experience to fall back on to be able to say with any confidence what would happen if you were to carry out certain actions. And then you take the risk of data inaccuracies, individual biases. If you use Kalibrate planning, and you don't have to rely on multiple Excel spreadsheets spread across the organization. You have one online geospatial tool which everyone can use. So there's a single point of reference that everyone across the organization can use, and everyone's going to be working off the same data. We have a complete data set for the entire market. So it's not just data on your own sites, but also data on your competition. And again, from a benchmarking, from an understanding the dynamics of the market, that's invaluable. We've got the predictive modeling, so we're not relying on experience. We're not relying on guessing outcomes. We've got robust predictive modeling based on AI and machine learning, and we've been developing these models for decades. It's a streamlined, efficient process. Running simulations takes seconds, seconds in the best case scenario, minutes worst case scenario. You can combine, like I say, you can easily combine multiple scenarios together and run them. And again, this takes very little time. So that gives you the time and opportunity to really think strategically about what you want to do, run multiple scenarios, and really make sure that you build the strongest plan possible. And obviously, because this is all done via the tool, it's robust, impartial, data-driven. And again, that from a justification perspective, especially if you're having to justify to senior management the market plan, it makes it so much easier to say, well, this isn't just us. This is also backed up by science, backed up by data. So it may be that you're absolutely convinced by the benefits of market planning. It may be that now you're absolutely convinced of the benefits of market planning, but actually you may not have the time or the resources in place to put it into action. You know, a good market plan does take time. So what we've done, and Carlos again alluded to it, you know, we have run market plans in conjunction with our clients for years. So our consultants can actually come work with the organization, and we can kind of outsource a lot of that market planning activity with you. So we still work with you, we still get you involved, but a lot of the heavy lifting is done by Kalibrate consultants rather than having to do it in-house. So we get all the benefits of your knowledge and experience, but all the heavy lifting, all the running behind the scenes, all the simulations, having to work out the process, putting everything, all of that is done by Kalibrate consultants, and that can help you get to a market plan in a much shorter space of time than it would be if you had to run this internally with your existing resources. So if that's something that you think you might be interested in, by all means reach out to your sales representative or your client services consultants, and we're really happy to take you through what a market planning activity with Kalibrate might look like. Okay, so that was all that I had today. So do we have any questions?
Yeah, we have a couple questions there. We have a couple questions there, Elizabeth. If you can go through them. I think we have 3 of them.
So we use a Kalibrate planning model for various markets in the country we operate. Since my brand has very different market share in these markets, should we build a market plan for each market individually, and why? So yes, in essence. So a market plan needs to be. So this is where we go back to what is a market. So a market really is a coherent, consistent geographic area that covers your sites and kind of makes sense from a network operational perspective. So if you have multiple areas where you're present, but actually the dynamics are very different in each one, it is definitely worth running those market plans separately, because really the individual dynamics of what you're going to be looking to do in each market will be quite different depending on your position. So clearly, if you have a market leading position in one area, but you might be more of a follower in another, your strategies are likely to be very different. So it is definitely worthwhile considering those things separately, because your objectives are going to be different. You know, what you're looking to achieve is going to be different. So your starting point is going to be different, and your end point is going to be different. So absolutely, I would recommend running those separately. A market plan's beneficial only if I'm building or buying sites. No, absolutely not. So I mean, I hope that I've kind of shown with all the different activities that we have as part of the network, part of the market plan. Really, a market plan is understanding where you are, where you want to go, and how you're going to get there. So sometimes that involves building new sites if you're in growth mode, but you might actually be in rationalization mode. You know, in some markets are mature. You may have a very mature position. So actually what you might be doing is really looking at, okay, how can I make the most out of the assets that I have? So that might mean divesting sites that are not positively contributing to your network, focusing capital on the sites that are currently underperforming, that should be doing better, and looking to really squeeze as much volume out of the existing network that you have. So absolutely, there is 100% value in running a market plan if you are not building or buying. Additionally, I would say a market plan is also, like I said, the opportunity to really step back and think about what's going on in your market. It's what allows you to be prepared to any changes that you can see coming down the line. If you don't do a market plan exercise regularly, what you are leaving yourself open to is being caught on the hop. You know, there are some structural changes that are happening in your market, whether they be, economic or linked to legislation or whatever, or linked to competition, competitive activities. And if you're not prepared, If you don't have a plan, then you're going to have to react urgently. And that might mean that you are not necessarily acting in an optimized way because you're having to do things very quickly and you may not have the time to work out the best way of doing it.
Thank you, Elizabeth. We have 1 minute to go. I think we can address that last question.
Yeah, so I don't know the details of what my competitors will do in the coming years and where they will build or improve sites. Could I use the number of competitor new builds or sites to improve as a way to incorporate the impact they will have on my network's market plan? Yes, so your network plan, you can build your network plan with everything that you know and build and basically say, okay, these are the outcomes based on everything that I know. And then you can also say, okay, this is kind of this, and this is where it gets me. So these are my outcomes based on everything that I know. And then you can start saying, well, I'm going to then start putting in some hypotheses, things that I think are going to happen. And then based on those hypotheses, you can then adjust your modeled outcomes, if you like, your known outcomes, based on the hypotheses that you're making in terms of what you think is going to happen. So absolutely, you absolutely should be taking into consideration what you think your competition, what you think the market's going to do, even if you don't have any specific details. Right, I think that's it. So I hope you found this session useful. Like I said, if you have any questions about market planning, you'd like to know more about how we can help, please reach out. We'll be more than happy to talk you through what we can do and how we can help with market plans. There's a couple more sessions coming in the last week of the conference. There's an interesting session about mobility. So this is about better understanding your customers based on the use of mobility data. The location analytics journey, so how you can use location analytics to improve your performance. And talking about marketing and real estate, so really how those teams can combine together to make the most of your real estate decisions. Thank you very much for attending. I hope you'll find some time for some of these sessions, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.